I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to hover over my Finder icon here. Finder is part of the operating system. And when you bring up Finder, it brings up a window that you were looking at. Okay, so now I'm going to minimize my Safari here and we'll focus on Finder. When you open up Finder, and it brings up what is called recents. This is the sidebar on Finder. The sidebar can be customized, but yours will look different from mine. Okay, and the sidebar has a list of things. iCloud Drive usually is at the top. You might see a shared folder. There you see locations. These are physical drives that I have. My MacBook Pro shows me my MacBook hard drive, but it also shows a network because I'm connected to a network. It also shows my backup drive, which I use for my time machine backup. And it also shows a drive that's called Elements. That's the name of the drive brand that makes it. That's a separate drive. And you can see them below here. Here's Elements. Here's the Seagate backup drive. And then my Macintosh hard drive. Okay, so when you look at the MacBook Pro, it shows you all of the attached drives. And then but you can look at them separately here as well. And then I have nothing on the network really, but I do have a printer attached to my Apple Bonjour, so it shows up there. I do have OneDrive here, and I have my Macintosh hard drive. Your favorites here can be from your drive or they can be from anywhere because you can actually customize this favorites. What happens first of all is when you open up OneDrive or your File Explorer, or excuse me, when you open up Finder, it brings up what's called recents. So recents brings up any files you've been looking and working with recently, previous 30 days, September, etc. I can look at what's on my desktop. Think of what's on your desktop as a folder. So you can see my whole desktop here. So you can see that I've got Elements here, but it's not a file or a folder. It's a separate drive. Here's my Seagate drive. That's listed here. But I've got a couple of folders here for some graphics, for some graphics that I use, a file that's a MP3, something called Automator, which is built into Mac that gives you the ability to create a little program. And then I got an icon to launch Windows 11. And you can see they're all duplicated here along the desktop view. That's like a folder. Okay. Then I've got a downloads folder. I've got a Bob folder, which I'm a user on my Mac, so that whatever I have in my files will be listed here. But I also have a documents folder. I set up and dragged a stock photos folder over to the favorites because I like using it a lot. And I have there, you'll see an applications folder. You'll see AirDrop. If you have a Google Drive, it might show up here, and you'll see movies, music, and pictures. I know documents, downloads, desktop, movies, music, and pictures, and recents show up for everybody. They're standard across everything. That's what the sidebar is. Okay, and I'll show you how to drag something over to the sidebar in a few minutes. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is as I looked at these sidebar icons, things looked a little bit different. So applications shows icons, whereas documents shows a list of folders. That's controlled by what's called the view up here. Okay, and the view gives you the ability to manage how you look at whatever is appearing in the list of Finder. Now, one thing I want to point out to you as well is that at the bottom of Finder, you will see what is called the path. The path tells you how you're navigating through Finder. Okay, think of it like a big file cabinet. Your Macintosh hard drive is one big file cabinet. And you saw when I clicked on that, went right up to the Macintosh hard drive. But if I go to Documents, it shows Macintosh hard drive, users, because Macs support multiple users. I'm Bob, and I'm in my documents folder. If I look at Bob, it'll show me Bob here in the sidebar. It'll show me all of the files and folders that I look at here. When you're looking at the sidebar and you'll see the path for wherever you're going. Okay, so what you can do is you can change the view of any folder you are looking at. Okay, you don't change the view of a file, you change the view of a folder. So if I look at, for example, my documents folder here, I can change the view by going to these icons at the top. I like a list view most of the time, and if you hover over this, it'll say, I'll give you a little tooltip, show items as icons in a list or in columns or a gallery. I can change this view to icons, okay? And the icons are here. Now, they're scattered around a little bit, and one of the things you can do is if you right-click, you can clean it up and it'll sort them out for you. Let's click clean up by name, and it organized them all by name for me automatically. I can drag these around if I want to and click on my mouse and move them and adjust them if I want to and change the order they're in. But if I want to clean them up by their name or their size, or I can do that. I have some options. So that's one reason why that right click is really helpful. Sometimes you'll see some what are called context sensitive options that you can do with a file or folder. So let me show you the different views here. This is a icon view. This is a list view. This is a column view. So this will show you subfolders and subfolders and subfolders. So if you have a folder like app downloads, you will see what's inside of that folder. If you have a folder like Audacity, which is an editing tool for editing audio, you'll see that. And you can see subfolders and subfolders and subfolders. So it shows you that column. So if you have a lot of nested folders, that column view is really helpful. My personal preference is the list view. And if you're looking at a view, you can go back and forward by clicking on these back arrows and forwarders. When you go back to the beginning of the folder you're looking at, it stops for you. And then another view is a icon view. It shows icons of the different folders and that you can look at. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. Just depends on what approach you want to take to them and try and use them. Now, stock photos here is a great one I use because I have a lot of stock photos. And here's a folder I have, creating backgrounds. Now, this little arrow here gives me the ability to open up this folder, and I can see all of the files that are in the folder. Now, one of the things that's helpful to understand about looking at a file is understanding whether it's on your local hard drive or whether it's stored in the cloud. In this case, if I look to the right, here's a garden for backgrounds class. It has a little cloud arrow and a down arrow pointing out. That means it is in the cloud, but it is not on my device. So it's not downloaded. Now, I think I keep my stock photos in OneDrive, so I can click on this and it'll download it to my computer. And so now the cloud disappears. So now I know that that file is on my local drive and it's also in the cloud. Okay, and so I can see a little bit of information, when it was modified, how big it is, and what kind of folder it is. Each of these columns gives you the ability to sort all of the files in a folder, whatever folder you're in. So you can sort by size, kind, date modified, and name, and just depending on what you're looking at. If you want, you can see the path here. These are stored on my OneDrive because that's the beginning of the path. They're in a folder called Stock Photos. the subfolder called backgrounds for creating custom backgrounds class, and this is the file here. Okay, I can create a new folder anywhere. Okay, so if I'm in this folder, this list of folders here, I can go to File, and then I can click on New Folder. Okay, and that gives me the ability to add a new folder here in the location, and I can call it Tech Topic Sample Folder. Okay, and now I have a new folder. There is nothing in it. If I click on the little disclosure icon, nothing's in it. So how do I get things in it? Well, I can go to stock photos, but it's hard to see where my other folder is. It kind of disappeared in this list. So one of the things I like to do with Finder and organizing things is I like to create what's called a new Finder window. I'm looking at a window here on my Mac screen. Okay, and so when I'm looking at a window, I have the ability to adjust the size. I'm dragging the arrows here back and forth, okay, and changing how it looks. I also have the ability to go up to the menu here for Finder, go to File, and I can always click on New Folder, but I want to click on New Finder Window, and it opens up a second Finder window that I can navigate through completely different, independently of the first one. So I'm going to go to stock photos. I'm going to change this to a different size, move it over here a little bit, and drag it down so it's easy to work with. And now I have two Finder windows side by side. So I'm going to open up this Tech Topic sample folder here. Okay, there's nothing in it. And so I'm going to open up stock photos, and I'm going to take something here, and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to drag it and drop it on top of the Tech Topic sample folder. I have just moved the file from this location to this location with just by dragging and dropping. So one of the tricks you can do that I find really, really helpful for moving things around is creating this dual Finder window view and being able to drag and drop. If I want to drag it back, I just click on it on the right and drag it over and drop it onto the stock photos, and it moves over here to the stock photos. It is a tremendously useful way, and I use this several times a day if I'm moving things around, if I want to, and changing them around. So it's a really, really helpful tool for being able to manage and deal with different types of folders and files. Now I've got a lot of files here. So if I want to view them differently, I can change this to icons, and it'll change the folders to icons. If I work on this stock photos, it shows them as little icons here. Another way to look at them is if you like looking at them as a list, you can go up to the view here, and this gives you your list options, your sort options. We'll take a look at sorting, but I can show a preview here. And if I want to see a preview, it'll add a column here. Now I don't have a file selected, but if I click on this file, you can see a preview in this column. So if you're looking at a list view and you want to see a preview of something, you can do that, and it makes it easy to see what that file looks like, just instead of just looking at it by name. So that's another tool you can use to manage them, is by doing it that way. I'm going to minimize this Finder window and make this one bigger again for us so we can look at it a little bit easier here. Okay, so if I go to something like Documents, Zoom is a folder that's created. If you're ever wondering where your Zoom chat ends up in, this is where your Zoom chat ends up. And they do a nice job by dating and time stamping all of the meeting chats that you have if you had a meeting. Some meetings don't have a chat, other meetings do, and you can tell by that disclosure arrow whether there's anything else in there or not. And you can see them again by icons, or by list, or by columns, or by icon here, which is another way of view, by folder icon. There's a couple of other tools you can use. As I mentioned, there's the menu up here, and the menu has some duplicates of some of these commonly used tools here. But if we look at group, we can group these files together by the date created or the size. Let's try the size, and it'll change them and organize them in a little different way. It'll group them by size. These are all fairly small ones. We could group them by name. We can group them by kind. So let me go to stock photos here. That'll be a little bit better to look at. And if I go to list view and we go to group, some of these are PNG images. Some of them are JPEGs. Okay. And it has organized them by folders, by documents types, by PDFs, by PowerPoint and Keynote presentations, or by images. So it's grouped them in a different format. So if you don't like the view, you can always go back to none, and it won't group anything. So you can see here's a folder with some art in it, a few items here, but it's stuck here in name order because it begins with 5G. If I'd rather have it viewed by what it's like, I can go by kind and it'll show me folders here on top as opposed to listing them all in order based on their name. Well, the other thing you can do here is there's an action button, creating a new folder, opening this in a new tab. Now, one of the things that you can do with Finder is, in addition to having a tab for another window, you can also have a tab. So I can have a tab here and change it and use a different view. So if I wanted to see recents in this tab and stock photos in this tab, I can do that without the need to open up another window. And it gives you a way to look at multiple views of different folders without having to close your view all the time. So if I wanted to see, oh, I think I've got it in this folder, I think I've got it in this, and you wanted to look at two or more folders really, really quickly, just like viewing on a web browser, you have tabs, so you can click between different tabs to view them. And if you ever want to close a tab, you just click on the X here to do that. So that's one of the things you can do is by creating a new tab. The other thing you can do is share, and share will bring up your share options for sending it to a friend or sending it via AirDrop to another device, or sending it by messages or to a note, or to even freeform or adding it to your photos album, or depending on whatever options you have set up for sharing. And tags gives you the ability to give it a little icon here. I can say the red tag and I'll click on that. And you can see there's a column, there'll be a column here for a tag. If you want to find something really quickly or organize things by color coding, you can do that. And you can always remove the tag by right-clicking on it and looking at it that way. Now, this is a folder that's in OneDrive. So I have OneDrive on the bottom, stock photos, 3D printer. If I right-click on this, the quick actions that I see are OneDrive actions. I can always keep this photo on my device, which means it'll be simultaneously in OneDrive in the cloud, but it will also be stored locally. Okay. And then you'll see a little icon show up here in the status that'll tell you that it's local. If I don't want to keep it on my drive, I can say free up space, and it'll just save it in the cloud, and it'll only be in the cloud. So eventually that icon will change and it'll become a cloud only icon. So you have options in OneDrive. iCloud Drive, similar approach, okay? Depending on what type of iCloud function you have, you can see I've got things that are downloaded and things that are stored on my device. This little download tool here tells me that there's files that I have here that I can use, and that I can download to my device if I want to. I can make sure it's downloaded now, or I can keep it downloaded. So different clouds work a little differently. This is iCloud. So if you're storing things in iCloud, I can go to keep downloaded and it'll keep this file locally on my device. The icon looks a little bit different than in OneDrive, just because it has a little gray with a down arrow. That means it's downloaded. So that's how you can tell if something is in a cloud drive. You always want to look at the path information and then see if you're looking at something in OneDrive or iCloud or Google Drive. And Google Drive works something in a similar fashion, but Google Drive information tends to be downloaded for the most part, as opposed to stored just on your device. So documents here is also listed in iCloud Drive. iCloud Drive doesn't list documents. iCloud Drive has a downloads folder, but I also have a downloads folder here on my Mac. So what's going on here is this can be really confusing. Downloads I have here are things that I have downloaded to my iCloud download folder. It is not the same as this folder. Okay, so if I go to a website and I download something on my Mac, it'll come into this download folder. But if you are using an iPhone or an iPad and you click on download, those downloads end up here in this download folder, and you can get to them from your Mac by going to your iCloud Drive download folder. So this is where it gets really confusing, and it makes sense to understand where you're located and what you're looking at any point in time to make sure you've got access to it and can view it clearly. Okay, so let me look at one other thing here. Usually things will get saved in documents, or if you're using an Apple application like Pages, they will get saved in your iCloud Drive under Pages. Pages, Numbers, and Keynote ought to have default folders, meaning that out of the box, when you set up your Mac account with iCloud, your Apple account with iCloud, you will automatically have a Keynote, a Numbers, and a Pages folder built into iCloud Drive. I'm going to open up Pages here. Okay, so Pages has things that I've got. It'll open up. I'm going to create a new document. I'm just going to start at something real new. I'm going to say this is a new document in Pages, and then I'm going to give it a title here. I'm going to call it Tech Test. Okay, and you can see where it's going to be saved. If you don't do anything, it will always save it to Pages in iCloud. If you click on this, you can choose whatever folder you want to save it to. But if you never changed it, it will be saved in Pages on iCloud. So now let's see if we can look at Pages in iCloud and see if it started to show up here. Yes, you can see already there is Tech Test saved in iCloud for me automatically. Search can be brought up by hitting the Command key and the space bar, and that brings up Spotlight Search. Okay, you can see that. So if I type in Tech Test, it will bring up a folder, and it'll bring up files with the name Tech Test in them. So I can click on this folder and I'll go to the folder. I can click on this Pages document that I found, and I can go to, it'll open it up directly. So you can always do a search for something. And if you don't know how to remember to type in the The search, you can always, there's usually a search icon in your menu bar that you can find. But I like using the command and space bar. It's just really fast. On my videos that I do, I put the year, the month, and the date at the beginning, in addition to the name of the video. So I can find them in order chronologically, but I can also find them by name. And then I make sure they're all in a folder, very easy to find. It's just like organizing files in a file cabinet. You'd think I'd want to have a cabinet drawer. My top drawer is, personal stuff. My bottom stuff is stuff that, I've been meaning to sort through. And, just think of each folder or as a different drawer in your cabinet. So
Yeah.
one of the things I do is I save all of my presentations that I do them in PowerPoint, but I've got all of them in a folder called Tech Topic Slides when I do slide presentations. And I've got them all, I put in the year, the month, the date, and the name. Okay, they're all PowerPoint, but this way I can find them by name or I can find them by date whenever I've done them. And so it's an easy way, and I just keep them in one folder. And that's an easy way for me to find them. So, I mean, everybody's got little different techniques for
Yeah.
trying to keep files organized, but using folders is a great way.
Yeah, you can have a folder that's travel, and then you could have cities in there or countries or whatever inside of that folder.
Yeah, and by dragging things into folders, it makes them easier to find, when you want to order. Just think of it like say a folder is a drawer, like a drawer in a file cabinet, and you can make subfolders if you want to, and more subfolders if you want to, but you don't, whatever it feels makes sense for organizing them. That little path information is probably one of the most useful tools because that will tell you whether you're on your local drive on your Mac or whether you're in iCloud or where you
Old,
are. It's
old
all
carryover from DOS.
yeah, it's actually called a breadcrumb trail. That's the technical name for it. Path is what it's used, but it's also called breadcrumbs because it's like when Hansel and Gretel, went into the forest. I think that's the fairy tale, right? That they left a trail of breadcrumbs so they could find their way back. Thanks, everybody.